baby. Welcome to another fun and exciting episode of OC and TJ. We're 3 weeks away from starting division previews, which is freaking fantastic because it actually gives us something to talk about. Because, as much as we love going back in time, we actually want to actually start getting into current football. But for now, let's introduce ourselves. It's OC. It's TJ. What's going on, buddy?
Dog days of summer. That's what's going on. I think, it really is. And there's no news. I mean, the only thing we really got the past week was the Lawrence extension.
Yeah.
Paid probably. I mean, well, I was gonna say athlete.
$55 million a year for an average quarterback.
Yeah, I mean,
just wait till you see the extensions that Tua and Dak are gonna get.
Well, yeah, Dak's gonna get a huge pay. If Tua gets 60, Dak's probably gonna get like 65, which is crazy. So this inflation's crazy, but the salary cap keeps going up. So we'll see. I mean, when we talk about today's topic, we'll see that a lot of the, I guess, contracts we're talking about don't look as inflated as they are today because the salary cap keeps going up.
So that happened. Apparently, Brandon Ayuk told Jaden Daniels that they don't want me anymore, which a lot of people consider they to be the 49ers. I don't know what it is, but I mean,
a contract way of negotiating a contract. I feel like they all do that. So.
Matt Ryan and Arthur Blank, they're getting into the Falcons Ring of Honor, so not surprising there. And then Tom Brady Day happened last week, so that was beautiful to watch. I watched the whole ceremony; it was flat out perfect. Everything it could not have gone better. Just being a Patriots fan, and then something else happened a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So
16 years. That is five and a half since the last Boston. Trip. So
when the Patriots won the Super Bowl. I mean, normally, 2018, the Patriots won the Super Bowl. The Bruins were in the Stanley Cup. The Red Sox won the freaking World Series, and the Celtics, without their two best players, made it to the conference finals and forced a Game 7 against LeBron James.
Yep.
So that was the last time we actually won a championship. And now, the Celtics are champs. They were on top. The Bruins, unfortunately, choked in April against the same team they blew it against last year. The Red Sox are the definition of mediocre, but are somehow 2 games out of a playoff spot. And the Patriots are somehow starting over for the first time in 25 years. So let's get into today's topic. So again, not a lot of news happened, not really too much to talk about, but the Trevor Lawrence extension kicked in, and he is getting paid $55 million over the next 4 years, which is flat out absurd. And it got me thinking, you know what? When I was thinking of ideas for this show, I'm thinking, you know what? Why don't we talk about something related to this? So at first, I wanted to do the best and worst extensions, but I remember I feel like we did something similar to that. So I wanted to go a little more broad and think, you know what? Why don't we go back and look at some of the best and worst decisions that every franchise has made over the last 15 years? It could be a draft pick. It could be a head coaching hire. It could be a firing. It could be a trade. It could really be anything. And because I am in just the absolute best mood today and I love everybody, why don't we flip it around? And I will talk about the best moves, and TJ can pull an Anakin Skywalker and go to the dark side. So,
yeah.
I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, TJ, but
oh, absolutely, man. I knew exactly what you're talking about. I mean, if we do, I think this is the right move because last time we did last time I did the positives and you did the negatives. So I think this time we switch it up. I love that.
Absolutely. And I was thinking of how to do this in order because doing it in a random order would be a little bit too interesting. So I you know what? Let's just go alphabetically and not by the city, but by the team name. And let's start with the 49ers since they don't have a letter to start off their name technically because it's just a 4. But I'll start, since, we're being optimistic here. For the 49ers, there have been a lot of positive moves that they made. They hired Kyle Shanahan. They hired John Lynch. They drafted Nick Bosa. They literally went to 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. So there really isn't anything hard. Obviously, you could say sticking with Brock Purdy would be a good one, but I'm going to go with trading for Christian McCaffrey because at the time he was traded, he was coming off of 2 season-ending injuries. He was pretty much rotting in Carolina, and running backs weren't really being viewed as a popular commodity for the NFL marketplace. But the 49ers gave up a lot to get, a still productive running back at the time. And once he comes to San Francisco, he just emerges out of the dust and pretty much returns to being the best running back in all of football. He's pretty much the reason why he was pretty much the biggest catalyst as to why they got to the Super Bowl last year, because if it wasn't for him, they would not have even gotten to that point. He was the offensive player of the year, and now he's the highest paid running back at $19 million a year. So I could easily point to the quarterbacks, but if they did a trade for Christian McCaffrey, they would not have been in this situation at all. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, so for a negative for me, I'd probably go with another trade. But this
I know what
is
you're
a little
talking
different.
about.
It's trading up for Trey Lance. I think that
Yes,
is.
that's a
I think
no-brainer.
that's probably the no-brainer pick. I think it's the easiest one, and it's hard to find a lot of ones for the Niners because they've been so successful. I mean, they had they had a little slump in the mid 2010s, but other than that, they've been solid. So obviously they've been in 2 Super Bowls the past 4 years. So, yeah, but this move definitely sticks out. They traded 3 first-round picks up in the 2021 draft, and to see what that became for Miami. Not ideal, especially considering Trey Lance started like 4 games for the Niners, and he was shipped off after his second season. Clearly, it worked out. Obviously, I mean, it's good they did that because Brock Purdy is a stud. So,
Luck did it getting Brock Purdy.
it is very lucky, but I think for a silver lining for this, yeah, it sucks, and it is probably their worst move. Definitely their worst move of the last 15 years. But
Yeah,
it's better than just sticking with him and just hoping that it works, or just admitting you made a mistake. And that's what they did here, and you got to respect them for that. But definitely hurts a little bit when you think about all they gave up to get him. So
exactly.
that would be mine. I think Colin agrees with that one.
Yeah, an underrated one that I would think of is taking Solomon Thomas with their 3rd overall pick. I mean, the only reason why I wouldn't think that is because I don't think anybody saw Patrick Mahomes coming at the time. But if they had taken Patrick Mahomes and he was with Kyle Shanahan, I mean, it would have been just as successful with Andy Reid. But you never know because, Kyle Shanahan has been known for choking. But at the time, so was Andy Reid. So it actually could have worked out either way. But
so facts.
I mean, the only reason why I don't think we would bring that up is because we couldn't have seen that coming at the time. But anyways, let's go to the Bears, the Chicago Bears. Honestly, in the last 15 years, it's been mediocrity and, a couple of abysmal seasons. But they did have one thing work out for them in 2018. I was, I remember I was visiting Rollins College, as a senior in high school. The only reason why I was even visiting there in the first place was because my mom went there and, my family just really wanted me to look at it just to have some options, even though I knew deep down inside I wanted to go to Fairfield U. Safe to say it worked out for the both of us. But while I was on that tour, my phone was blowing up, and it turned out that the Bears traded a package for Khalil Mack, which ended up being a horrible move for the Raiders, which I think we'll talk about later on. But, I mean, not only did the Bears trade for him, but they gave him a massive extension to be one of the highest paid defensive players in the National Football League. And right away, he ended up being an instant game changer. They had the best defense in all of football. He pretty much picked up where he left off in Oakland, just absolutely wrecking offensive lines. They went 12-4. They won their division, and they were a double doink away from actually winning a playoff game. And since then, it's been a lot of mediocrity, but at the same time, I think any player would have been in that situation if Mitchell Trubisky was their quarterback, which I think we could get into in just a few seconds. But I think trading for Khalil Mack definitely was definitely something that ended up working out for them really well, because if they didn't, then they were never going to be that great.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about the worst move, I mean, you just alluded to it. I think I would probably say it's drafting Mitch Trubisky at 2nd overall in the 2017 draft.
Yes.
there's a difference between like a move that's like bad at the time and like obviously still turns out bad versus like a move that like you thought it might be good, but it turns out bad. This one, hard to tell because Trubisky definitely had talent and like he was like I definitely didn't feel like he was like shouldn't have been taken there or like shouldn't have been taken the first round. But
It was a project.
he definitely was a project, and they were they had Mike Glennon, which like obviously that was gonna make
They gave him $15 million
yeah.
guaranteed,
Honestly,
which was ridiculous.
that could be up there too because essentially
Yeah.
signing him forced Trubisky's like development to like kind of be hint because the plan wasn't for Trubisky. I feel like it was supposed to be kind of the same thing with Drake. Drake May's better than Trubisky. Don't get me wrong, but like similar circumstances. What I'm saying, but yeah, this I feel like considering he was taken over Deshaun over Mahomes, like I mean Deshaun in Houston, like that kind of
Yeah.
and it just put kind of a ceiling on their overall like playoff outcomes and like you know how good they could be because they had an elite defense, but when you don't have the quarterback, like he can only take you so far. We see that with so many teams today. But now he's a backup on the Bills, so I mean, like definitely, was it the Bears? Was it just like him not being a good quarterback? Probably a mix of both. But this was I'd say this was definitely their worst move. Just
I
because
mean,
they traded up to.
there were so many bad moves that the Bears made over the years. I mean,
Fair.
it wasn't just drafting Trubisky over Mahomes. It was the fact that they moved up one position just to get him, and the picks ended up turning into Alvin Kamara and Fred Warner. But there are plenty of other moves that blew up in their face. I mean, they fired Lovie Smith after a 10-6 season. They hired Mark Trestman instead of Bruce Arians. They traded up for Mitchell Trubisky, and the best quarterback was sitting there. They also traded a future first-round pick to get Justin Fields and completely failed him. And now, obviously trading down for the Panthers to get Bryce Young worked out for the time being, but, you also have Caleb Williams at number 1, so who knows? But, yeah, I think Trubisky has to be at the top.
Yeah.
Let's see. I actually turned off my phone here. Here we go. Next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. And again, over the last 50 years, it's been mediocrity to start, then trash midway, and now they're right back at the top with, them being pretty much a Super Bowl contender. Honestly, when I think of the best decision they've made, it's honestly, in hindsight, it's got to be drafting Jamar Chase. At the time, I really wanted them to take Penei Sewell because offensive line was a huge weakness. And when they drafted Jamar Chase, it was still a big liability. But at the same time, if they didn't take Jamar Chase, they would not have gone to the Super Bowl that year because him, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, with Joe Burrow coming back fully healthy, that was an outstanding offense. And thanks to those three, they knocked off the Raiders. Then they beat the number 1 seed Titans. Then they beat Mahomes in his house. And obviously they lost to the Rams in the Super Bowl. But at the same time, if they didn't take Jamar Chase, they would not have had a game-changing threat. As great as T. Higgins was, they needed Jamar Chase to really establish themselves as a threat. So I think drafting Jamar Chase has to be number 1 for sure.
Okay, so for my worst move since in the past 15 years, I'm going to go with another receiver that they drafted. I think drafting John Ross was probably one of their worst moves of the last 15 years. There's definitely more just because of how much mediocre they were in the 2010s. But I feel like this one hits a little different just because, he was taking 1 pick before Mahomes. Obviously, they had Dalton at the time, but still, you could have probably gotten a successor to Dalton. But Mahomes is a project, so I'm not going to say that's the reason. But, he held the 40-yard dash record at the time. Just to definitely helped his stock. I'm interested to see if he didn't break it where he would have gotten picked. Maybe it wouldn't have been that much because he had talent, obviously, with that type of speed. But, these teams have to take into consideration, the route running, their, yard after catch ability. And obviously with that speed, you do have it. And he showed flashes of it, but, the injuries and just, he just wasn't a consistent down-to-down receiver. And that you don't take that at 9.
Marvin Lewis never really had faith in him either.
Yeah, and I mean that's probably on. I mean he definitely like was like a deep like he definitely showed like shades of Deshaun Jackson, but like you need to have to have that route running ability that just can't have the speed. So now I don't know where he's at right now. I think he's on the Eagles now.
He's on the Eagles.
And he went to the So I mean, not like the worst player of all time, obviously, but definitely other players that could have taken there. So I'm gonna go with that, just because of who they could have taken elsewhere.
Yep, that's true. I mean, the Patriots took Tyquan Thornton in the second round. I think he broke the record for the fastest 40-yard dash.
Yeah, he's fast as hell too.
He's fast as hell, but he can't catch.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Let's go to the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, before 2018, it's been pretty bad. And now it's been really great. And actually, this offseason, it actually started sinking down. But honestly, obviously, he got traded already to the Houston Texans. But I think the best decision they made was trading for Stephon Diggs, because 2 years ago, they drafted Josh Allen. He was really raw. He was definitely a project. Had athleticism, but had horrible accuracy issues. The second year, he got better. He takes it to the playoffs. But if they did not trade for Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen would not be the elite quarterback that he is right now. I mean, because you definitely need a game-changing receiver that's going to open the whole offense up. And I think if Buffalo didn't make that move, then Josh Allen would have – I don't think he would have gotten worse, but he never really would have taken that next step where Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are right now. So I think trading for Stephon Diggs definitely was the best thing that could have happened to Josh Allen. And who knows, maybe him being gone, Josh Allen could could head into that Patrick Mahomes path, where I'm not saying he's going to win back-to-back Super Bowls, but he'll still be, a quality quarterback.
Yep. No, yeah, I definitely would have gone with either of the two, Allen or Diggs. I mean, they're both. I mean, with Diggs, you got to think he helped Allen a lot. But yeah, I think that's a good one. For me, it's probably when they extended Fitzmagic in 2011.
Ooh, I forgot about that.
I think because they extended him mid-season that year, and I totally forgot about that. I totally forgot it wasn't like an off-season extension or free agency signing.
Yeah,
they extended him midway through season, and they were doing okay, but then the turn, with Fitzpatrick, he can have that he can have the heat and he could bring it, but then the turnovers come and they come and they're in a row, they are game after game after game. So he gets on hot streaks and gets on cold streaks. So it's why it's tough it was always tough with Fitzpatrick. He was always a career backup, but you got to put an asterisk on there because he was one of the best backups ever. Which is, that's a pretty good accomplishment. But he signed a boatload of money. I don't know the exact terms, but it was a lot of money for that time.
I didn't even know they gave him an extension. I knew they gave him a big contract. Let's see.
Yeah. And then it just kind of fell off a cliff after that.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
6 year, $59 million with a $10 million signing bonus.
Which, remember, at the time, we were just talking about the inflation with quarterback contracts. That was a lot of money back then. That was what, almost 14 years ago at this point. So
yeah.
And it was just pretty bad after that. A lot of interceptions, a lot of fumbles. The Fitzmagic roller coaster. Obviously, not saying he's a bad player, but it really kind of just started the Bills downstream effect of bad quarterback play after bad quarterback play, and then Josh Allen comes to town, and they are, they're good now. Yeah. But that one sticks just because of how I feel it had kind of a downstream effect. So I'll go with that one.
If there was an NFL fan Hall of Fame, Ryan Fitzpatrick would be in the first. Ryan Fitzpatrick would be a first ballot. I mean, because not only did he have, those up and down performances that gave you Fitzmagic and Fitztragic performances, but he is hands down one of the best characters in the league. Just with his personality alone, he's made for television. That's why I love him on the Thursday night panel, because fans love him so much. And he wasn't the greatest quarterback or a starting level quarterback, but oh my gosh, he was just, you love him, and then there are times where you'll hate him. Or not really you hate him, you just feel sad for him because you just want him to be better.
But he'll have like a 400-yard game one day, and then a few games later he'll throw 7 interceptions. You're like,
exactly.
Oh, okay, where are we getting here?
Yeah, and he wasn't the only quarterback that got an extension. Well, the Bills weren't the only team that Ryan Fitzpatrick got an extension from, but I think we'll talk about that later. Let's go to the Broncos here, and honestly, the best one for me, I think it's pretty easy, was signing Peyton Manning in 2012, because you got to remember the year before, Tim Tebow took them to the playoffs. He won them a playoff game, and then they got destroyed by the Patriots in the divisional round. Tim Tebow had the athleticism, and he had a clutch gene, but he couldn't throw. And it was a reach at the time. Josh McDaniels took him in the first round just because they needed to get butts and seats. And once they saw that Peyton Manning was a free agent, even though it was a risk at the time because he was coming off several neck surgeries, Peyton Manning comes in and he pretty much lifts them back up in a playoff contention. He wins comeback player of the year his first season, MVP the second, and 2 years later they go on to win the Super Bowl. Even though he was a shell of himself, he at least held up his end of the bargain. So definitely one of the rare John Elway W's was signing Peyton Manning. It was either that or drafting Von Miller and signing DeMarcus Ware and pretty much every other player on that 2015 Broncos defense, the no-fly zone. But yeah, signing Peyton Manning, that's for sure. And if you want to go drafting Von Miller number 2, I have no issues with that whatsoever.
Do you even have to guess on this one? Like,
there are so many. There's so many, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah,
but I'll let you.
This one is really easy because maybe it's recency bias because it just happened, but trading for Russell Wilson has to be the worst Broncos.
Well, at the time, it was like a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, it was still risky though because Wilson was coming off a bad season with Seattle. Oh, he was injured for a little bit of it, but he was not good that year. So it was like you're banking on him, like not him not being the start of his fall, and frankly, it was. I mean, it's not even the worst. Like it's not even the worst move we're going to talk about today, which is crazy. But the fact that how much they gave up, you have like 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and those picks became like good players. Obviously, Drew Lock was in the mix too. But to think about how Seattle had Geno, like they
were supposed to be tanking.
Yeah, so like they gave away Russ. And people were like,
they're gonna suck.
But really, they had a better quarterback on the bench. So it's like they essentially just like gave away dead weight, and they got great picks out of it. They got Witherspoon out of it. They got some good role players.
Charles Cross.
Witherspoon and Cross alone, like that is like you win the trade a million times. But they get good role players out of it too. You really can't hate on that. So the fact they still have Geno. Is Geno like a superstar? No, but Geno is better than Russell Wilson is, and by a lot. So, slam dunk for Seattle, but for the Broncos, just an utter disaster. Now they're still paying him a boatload of money to play for Pittsburgh in their conference. So
exactly, that really does suck. But I mean, that's definitely number 1. But I mean, the Broncos. Since 2015, since Peyton Manning retired, it's been horrible. Just flat out horrible. Hiring Vance Joseph, taking Bradley Chubb over Josh Allen. Their whole quarterback situation was a flat out disaster since then. So really, it's just anything. Hiring Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah.
There were so many moves that were horrible since Peyton Manning left, which is why I put that at number 1, because Peyton Manning was literally the thing that was camouflaging every single quote-unquote bad decision that they made.
Yeah.
So, all right, now let's go to the Cleveland Browns. I mean, we're going to have a lot of lows here just because it's the Browns. But the one high was hiring Kevin Stefanski because he's pretty much the best head coach that they've had since they returned to the league. I mean, he's won 2 Coaches of the Year, 2 Coach of the Year awards. He's taken them to the playoffs. He's won them a playoff game, I think for the first time since Bill Belichick in 1994. And I mean, I know it might not be saying much considering it's the Browns, but yeah, Kevin Stefanski was he's pretty much the best head coach they've had since Paul Brown and Marty Schottenheimer. So he's definitely he'll definitely be inducted into their Ring of Honor. So
Yeah, just got an extension too.
Yeah, him and Andrew Barry. So really, those two alone, I think that's got to be the best there for them in the last 15 years. Absolutely.
It is funny though, because when you think of like how bad the Browns have been like forever, you mainly think about, oh, those 2010s were bad. You could point to Johnny Manziel, but really their worst move,
Trent Richardson. Yeah.
In my opinion, their worst move has come in like the good days for them, and that's trading for Deshaun Watson. And I'll preface this saying this is the worst move on this list. That I'm going to say. It is the worst move on this list because it's not even. I don't even. It is the worst sports move since I've been alive. Like without it, I think I'm not even being dramatic. It's not even recent. Like there's nothing good that came out of this move. First of all, what they gave up 3 first-round picks to Houston, and Houston now has their quarterback. They're looking good. They're looking like a Super Bowl contender. Not even that. They gave him
the most guaranteed money,
$30 million, fully guaranteed. So you cannot get rid of Deshaun Watson. You are stuck with him. There's ways you can get up contracts. Like we see these quarterbacks today. Like even like the extensions Goff and Lawrence and Dak are going to get. There's definitely
Carson Wentz. Yeah.
Carson,
I thought at the time. Yeah.
At the time, too. Yeah, even that one. Like, there's ways you can get out of it. Well, we saw that with Carson Wentz, too. We're about to see with, like, the Raiders, with Carr, the Broncos, too. I mean, obviously, it hurts a little bit, but, like, there's ways you can get out of some of these contracts. The Deshaun Watson, you are stuck. Even if because, I mean, he stinks. Like, he's probably one of the 3 worst quarterbacks starting right now. Yeah. And
he's average at best and, shaky and rusty at his worst.
He's average on his best game. He's that bad, at least these past 2 years. And I think when you combine that with the 3 first-round picks, all the money, and the fact because like Andrew Barry and Stefanski, if Deshaun Watson was getting paid 50% of his guarantees, he would be gone by now. Like it's not even a question.
For sure.
So it is really the definition of being stuck with a quarterback, and like I don't really know how you operate, knowing that you're not like there's like. It's hard to explain just because, like, there's teams that are worse than the Browns, obviously, but there's no team in the league right now that I could say more than the Browns that they're definitely not winning a Super Bowl.
And, by the way, when you consider the circumstances going on before he got that extension and before that trade happened, that makes it way worse.
And it was all the owner,
without question.
It was all the owner. Like,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
Coach, so it's like it's hard to say that
it was.
I don't know.
And by the way,
the worst move.
You were talking about like the worst move that you've been alive. Let me just put this in perspective. So obviously, my favorite basketball team just won the championship just a few nights ago thanks to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
2013, Billy King, the former general manager of the Brooklyn Nets, traded for a 37-year-old Kevin Garnett and a 36-year-old Paul Pierce, along with Jason Terry and DJ White. And the Brooklyn Nets, they traded pretty much their whole future, a boatload of draft picks, and their players for 2 30-plus-year-old guys past their prime, pretty much putting them on a short window. That was supposed to be the one that was going to take them to a championship. And it wasn't just the fact that Brooklyn couldn't even do that and everything blew up in their faces, but 2 of the first-round picks that Boston got were Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And it still was not as bad as the move that the Browns made to get Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think this will go down. It's already gone down in the history books, but we're not gonna see a move this bad in time. So
I think another one that's got to be right at the top was keeping Hugh Jackson after a 1-15 and a 1-16 season, and hiring Freddie Kitchens to be the head coach after that. Even though Baker Mayfield wanted him, you still should not have done that.
A lot of ones for the Browns.
There's so many. I mean, drafting Trent Richardson, drafting Johnny Manziel, their whole. Have you seen that picture of the quarterback jersey with all the quarterbacks just hanging down to the end of the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nothing else needs to be said. The head coaching carousel, the GM carousel. I mean, the Browns were one of the biggest laughingstocks in all of football. And trust me, when Deshaun Watson gets cut, and he's going to get cut or pretty much traded, when that happens, when they decide to move on from him, Yeah, we're going to rehash it, and we're going to remember why the Browns continue to be the Browns. Even though, and the problem is, they were in the freaking playoffs last year.
They're a good team. They're a good team. It's just they have a quarterback getting paid a huge chunk of their salary cap, so they can't.
And a guy coming off their couch took them there.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more sad. But anyways, let's go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. For me, this is a no-brainer. It's signing Tom Brady. I mean, we literally talked about this to start the show. The Patriots inducted him into the Hall of Fame ceremony, or into their Hall of Fame. They retired his number. They're literally building him a freaking statue. And the ceremony was beautiful. There's no doubt about it. But when he went to Tampa, literally the first thing I said was they're winning the Super Bowl. Because in 2019, they had the pieces to make the playoffs. I don't think that, what's the best way to say it? Most of the players from that 2019 team ended up winning the championship the next year. And it was because they finally had the quarterback. And obviously they brought in Leonard Fournette and Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski. But Jameis Winston was turning the ball over way too much. He threw 30 interceptions. I think he lost 5 fumbles. And the minute they signed Tom Brady, they finally had hope. And sure enough, they won the Super Bowl their first year in a pandemic, and they win the division the next 2 years. So this one is a piece of cake.
Yeah, that was easy. This one was easy for me too. The Buccaneers deciding, you know what, in the second round, we're going to trade up for a kicker when they took Robert
that's Aguayo. What I was thinking. Roberto Aguayo, wide right Aguayo.
Not much to say there. Even if he's the best kicker of all time, like, I'm not going to lie, though, I like this is basically just position scouting. Like, you don't know, like, I could look at this move when you first see it and you're like, that's ridiculous. He was a fine kicker. I don't think there was anything bad about him. He wasn't great. He definitely had some misses and some bad stuff like that, but he wasn't like the worst kicker of all time. It was just the fact that you traded up and took a kicker in the second round. So not really much to say there.
I mean, the Raiders took Sebastian Janikowski, but that ended up working out for them.
I guess, but who was taking Robert Aguayo in the next?
I agree with you, but I'm just saying, that's the exact opposite of taking a kicker that early.
I always forget about that.
But let's go to Arizona here. The last 15 years, it took me a while to think about it, but I think trading for DeAndre Hopkins was just a steal for them. I mean, first of all, it was more laughable for the Texans just for trading literally one of their best players, really. Yeah. And what makes this even better for the Cardinals was that they found somebody who was willing to take on David Johnson's bloated contract. And, even though it was justified at the time he got it, I mean, the injuries just piled on, and it just made the contract even worse. He was a shell of himself when he came back. But the minute that DeAndre Hopkins got there, I mean, he did everything that was expected of him. He became Kyler's favorite target, and even though the results were not there, I mean, the numbers were effective. He was still one of the best receivers in the game. He still had an amazing catching radius, and he at least did whatever he could. It was just, things happen.
Well, I can tell you the thing that happened. It's the fact that they had Cliff Kingsbury, and I think that is.
Well, that was a horrible hire at the time.
Worst move in the past. Yeah, I think has been their worst move past 15 years. I think.
Really.
When you just look at it and they hired him for Kyler, and I've always been in the mind. Maybe that's just this is a personal thing. I've always been of the mindset you don't hire your coach just because of the. I feel like they just did that so that they thought it was just immediately going to work. Oh, you have Cliff and you have Kyler. Oh, because Cliff worked with Mahomes.
Well, at the time, I mean, they didn't have Kyler Murray. They had Josh Rosen.
Well, but they knew they were gonna draft Kyler Murray essentially. So it's I feel like at the time everyone knew at that point they were going to draft Kyler. They had the first overall pick, so, I mean, it makes sense. But, he was 28, 37, and 1 as a head coach. There were so many late-season collapses. I feel like every year they just collapse late in the season. And, I feel like him and Kyler were never on the same page just because Kyler –
calm the heck down!
Yeah, I know.
Calm the heck down!
Well, because, honestly, I feel like it was trying to – what is the saying? Trying to fit a – square peg in a round hole. I feel like Cliff was trying to run his offense, but as Kyler's game evolved, Cliff was just not willing to budge, not willing to let him make all the reads and like, he wanted him to be that scrambling quarterback. Kyler's like, no, I want to be that gunslinger, that Brett Favre that could run, like type of
exactly.
thing. So,
Before he even took the job with the Cardinals, he had a sub 500 record at Texas Tech, and the only reason why he was even relevant is because Patrick Mahomes was his quarterback.
Yeah. Bingo.
So, I mean, now he's at USC, and he at least did a pretty good job with Caleb Williams. But then again, what offensive line wouldn't when Lincoln Riley is A, your head coach, and B, you have freaking Caleb Williams as your quarterback?
He's with the Commanders now.
Yeah, now he's with the Commanders. That's right. Well, last year was with USC.
Yeah.
I don't know why Washington hired him. I mean, it's just you're pretty much getting the same thing. You're pretty much getting the same results with Kyler. It's like there are going to be some flashes, but it's just going to be average at best, and just god awful head scratching moments at your worst.
Like the Cardinals.
So exactly. Okay, so now we go to the Chargers, and honestly, they're the definition of heartbreak and pain, just because anytime you have expectations for them, they just let you down. But honestly, I mean, it's too early to say hiring Jim Harbaugh because, you actually need to see what they could do. But, this is a tough one, just because over the last 15 years, they've normally been a pretty good team, but I think drafting Justin Herbert has to be at number one. And I know that's not really saying too much, but, they moved on from Phillip Rivers. And, some were even saying that they shouldn't have taken a quarterback and just roll with Tyrod Taylor. But I think you had to take Justin Herbert. He was easily one of the most talented quarterbacks at the time. And in his rookie year, he was flat out prolific. Even though they weren't winning games, he was literally doing everything they could. He was the only reason why they were relevant. And, since then, his career has just been getting wasted. I think getting Jim Harbaugh was definitely a blessing because he knows how to work with quarterbacks. He knows how to work with NFL players. He was a quarterback. He was a first-round pick. He knows what it takes. So I think drafting Justin Herbert has to be up there. And I don't know if I'm missing anything. Maybe drafting Joey Bosa or Derwin James. I don't know. Keenan Allen, sure. But right now it's Justin Herbert. But it's just like, the Chargers are normally good. So it's like it's hard to just pick one.
Yeah, I'd definitely lean the Justin Herbert one. I mean, it's been rough the past few years, but it could probably be attributed to Brandon Staley, who I'm going to talk about now, because I think that has been the worst Chargers move past 15 years, just because how loaded these rosters were. He was supposed to be coming from the Rams, this defensive mastermind. That wasn't the case. His defenses were always unprepared and really bad.
They couldn't understand the system.
No, and then there's a lot of either blowout losses or when they won, I feel like it was mostly because of Herbert. And then he'll always be remembered for that just historic collapse against Jacksonville.
He should have been fired after that game.
Yeah, I agree. But then he was fired after that even worse historic thing against the Raiders or whatever the hell that was. What was it, 63-7 game, whatever. That was bad. And I mean, that's what got him fired. So I would definitely say when the Chargers hired Brandon Staley, just because of what he was supposed to bring and how bad it ended up turning out, I definitely go with that. And honestly, it's pretty much wasted Herbert's start to his career. So
exactly,
like you mentioned Harbaugh before, you got to hope that a coaching change was really the thing that Herbert needed, and that's not too late.
Yeah, signing J.C. Jackson is definitely up there too. But I mean, Patriots fans knew someone was going to desperately overpay them. But yeah, it's a shame that Brandon Staley was that bad, because I actually liked the coaching hire at the time, because when he was with the Rams, they were the best passing defense in all of football. But it turns out that defense was so loaded that they won the Super Bowl the next year. And when he went to the Chargers, he still had a boatload of talent, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. So I agree with you there. For the Chiefs, to me, this is too easy. It's trading up for Patrick Mahomes, and it definitely worked out for the Bills somehow, because they actually used that swap to get Tre'Davious White in some way, but he's not Patrick Mahomes. I mean, at the time, it was pretty surprising. I wouldn't say it was too surprising, because Alex Smith was pretty much a check-down game manager, and they needed someone that was going to push the ball down the field. But Patrick Mahomes is literally in the best situation he could have asked for, because if he was taken by the Bears, he was not going to be that great. He would have at least like tried to do everything he could, but with the Bears, no, he would not have had the same amount of success that he has now that he does now at Kansas City. So yeah,
Yep, it's an easy one.
It's too easy.
Yeah, I think the last few have been very recent ones, and I swear they are. I feel like the ones I'm going to talk about later are not as recent, but these last few have been. I think one of them just happened. I think signing Jawan Taylor is probably one of their worst moves since 2010, just because there hasn't been a lot of bad moves to the Chiefs because of how successful they've been, but there might be some that tie this, but I feel like this one is notable to me just because of how much money they signed him to last offseason and how it was really bad last year. They signed him for like $20 million a year, and as a tackle, you're cream of the crop. Like you are one of the best if you're getting signed for in the 20s. Obviously, that'll change the next 5 years, we were talking about earlier, but I digress. All the penalties and how they literally had to get the tight ends to start helping out with blocking because he was missing on everything. It was
too many false starts.
Yeah, that definitely didn't help. But also, it was just he wasn't blocking well either. I know everyone points to penalties, that sucked too. But he wasn't blocking well either. So it's pass pro was not great either. So it's I feel like when you combine those, he was probably I mean.
I didn't think he was terrible last year. It was just the penalties were just the penalties.
$20 million a year good though, not even close. It wasn't even close to $20 million a year good. So it's and you need protection for your franchise quarterback. Obviously, if there's one quarterback who doesn't need it, it's Mahomes. But everyone needs it. So it's you can't whiff on those positions, especially when you're paying that much money. Especially when a lot of your salary cap is getting allocated to your quarterback. You need to hit on all the other free agency positions. So yeah, I'd say definitely that's the biggest miss for sure.
Well, let's go to the Colts here because, they've been relatively good for the most part, but I mean, the Colts are never really known for making too many good decisions, and Ryan Grigson was definitely at the top of that. But the one thing that they actually did get right was keep Jonathan Taylor, because last offseason, he demanded a trade, and everything was really really on thin ice there, but they were able to give him a 3-year extension. He bounced back well from the injuries that he was dealing with the year before, and now he's still a really productive running back, and he's definitely going to return to being the face of the offense. So if there was one thing that Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard did get right, it was making sure that Jonathan Taylor was still there, because if they had let him go somewhere else, it was just going to be another big L to what the Colts have done really for their entire history, because it's just, even when you go back to when they ditched Baltimore in the middle of the night, they have just been flat out, they've just been a joke. And I know they won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning, but it was against Rex Grossman. Anybody could have. If we had not choked, we would have won that Super Bowl. So what would you think was the worst? And I actually think I know what you're going to go with, but I'll let you say it.
Mine's probably trading for Wentz.
Really?
I think, with trading a first-round pick for a guy who was probably – so Wentz, obviously, he had some good seasons before, but 2020, he was probably the worst quarterback in the league out of all the starting quarterbacks. He was benched. He's benched for a rookie who they were using as a decoy. Obviously, hurts
exactly.
Now.
Well, they thought it could work out because, he was with Frank Reich. And who was the offensive coordinator when he had his best season? Frank Reich. Continue.
Yeah, but clearly that didn't end up working out because then they traded him to Washington. And, I think they traded him to Washington the next season. So I think, and they were banking on him being, the next franchise quarterback after Luck. Now they're with Richardson, hoping that's the case. But
exactly,
me trading a first-round pick is not ideal. So I'd probably go with that one just because of all the stakes and, what they gave up to get him. So
I mean, that was definitely bad. I thought you were going to go with ruining Andrew Luck, because
It's not really. It's hard to quantify that because it's not really a move, but that's definitely the worst though. Like
there are a quantity of moves that just
yeah,
flat
there's
out
like a
ruined him.
compilation of moves in that one.
Traded a first-round pick for Trent Richardson,
Yeah.
signing Andre Johnson and Frank Gore, who are past their primes, not investing in the offensive line, not improving the defense. Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano were horrible, just flat out horrible, and Jim Irsay did nothing about it.
Honestly, the Chuck Pagano one could be definitely a good one too.
Exactly.
I feel like I always forget about the Trent Richardson one because
signing Matt Ryan was trading for Matt Ryan was definitely got to be up there too because he completely he was
I
cooked.
probably would give the nod to Wentz though because nod. I probably would give it more to Wentz though because of how much they gave up. But honestly,
Washington trading for Wentz was probably worse than the Colts.
Could be.
That's why I was worried after. That's why I was worried after Wentz didn't work out at Washington. That's why I thought that they were going to go and get Jimmy Garoppolo.
Honestly, though, now I think about it, the Richardson one might be worse. Now I think about it.
Yeah, trading a first.
It's hard because like the Wentz one, like when you're a quarterback and you miss on a quarterback, it's much worse than like missing on a running back. But they also gave up a first. It's much more warranted to give up a first for a quarterback.
Yeah. What makes it worse was the Browns used that pick to get Johnny Manziel.
So I guess
it's a lose-lose for everybody.
I don't even know. It's one of those two for me. That's a tough one.
Yeah. So for the Commanders, not a lot of great moments because every year has been plagued by Dan Snyder, which means the best decision that I think that this organization made was actually getting rid of him because that man is the worst owner in the history of the NFL. He ruined the reputation and the culture of one of the proudest organizations in football just because of his freaking ego. And that's not even doing itself justice because if you look at the stuff he did off the field, it's even more egregious and disgusting. So, F you, Dan Snyder. No one misses you. What about you?
I'm thinking this is a lot, so it's tough to think about. But I'd probably go with signing Josh Norman. They signed him to a boatload of money after his, granted, warranted. Like that, not a bad move at the time, but how that, played out, not good. He was not good for them. I mean, his career basically just fell off a cliff. But it's interesting to remember with Norman because like he came into the league at such an old age, and his 1 or 2 good seasons were really like in the Panthers' prime. But it was also like when cornerbacks kind of fizzle out. So his prime really hit when he was really like kind of a 1-year wonder because he was like 28 when he had that like All-Pro Pro Bowl season. So then he almost 30 at Washington. I think he's honestly still playing, but he's probably a free agent right now. But yeah, I'd probably go with that one just because they spent so much money. But honestly, there's more to Albert Hainsworth is probably one too. That was like right on the
Oh, that has to be number one. Are you kidding me? $100 million?
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, like they get more guarantees were to Norman. So I don't know.
Well, here's the thing, though. It was Josh Norman at least tried. Albert Hainsworth didn't want to do any of the conditioning drills. And the lowest moment, I think, do you remember this Monday night game where Washington played Philly, and when Albert Hainsworth got beat on a block and he pretty much fell to the ground, he just decided not to get up. Yeah. Just laid there.
Business decision.
At least Josh Norman tried, but actually my favorite moment from Josh Norman's Washington tenure was in 2016. I think this was a London game against the Bengals. He just went up to the podium and said, "Who's official 88?" I
don't even remember that, honestly.
You don't remember? It's a freaking classic press conference. That's at least Josh Norman tried. Yeah. Like Albert Hainsworth did it. That's why I'd say it's worse. But I know what you mean though. It's definitely up there just because of the amount of money. You could really say that with any huge contract that Washington gives out. Because I mean, Landon Collins, Deion Sanders, Bruce Smith, Jeff George. I mean, all the past their prime players just to for name recognition. I mean, you could really say that with anybody, for really being honest here. But let's go to the Dallas Cowboys here. They hardly make any bad decisions, sort of. But I definitely know the best decision that they made, and it's not choosing Dak over Tony Romo, even though it was definitely the right thing for them to do. For me, it's not drafting Johnny Manziel in 2014 because if you remember, Jerry Jones really wanted to draft him. He was about to make the call, and his son snatched the card and hung up the phone and said, "There's no way in hell we're doing this." And who did the Cowboys take? Zach Martin. So they ended up taking a future Hall of Fame right guard instead of one of the biggest busts in NFL history. So that's why I say it's number one, because even though an owner really wanted to get Johnny Manziel, his son made the smartest decision of his whole career by just doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have said drafting Zach Martin. So you just kind of spinned it. So I think they're both essentially the same move. But yeah, I think that's whatever happened in that 2014 draft, that was probably their best move since 2010. I think another draft pick they made was with Morris Claiborne was probably their worst. Because I think he was 6th or 7th overall. He was up there, but
he's up there. I think we did this in a revisiting episode.
Yeah, and we revisited like how just really did not pan out for them. Then he bounced around. Went
to the Jets,
Jets, Eagles, not good. Was he the worst cornerback of all time? No, but definitely was not the first round billing that the Cowboys hoped. So I'd probably go with that one.
The Zeke extension is definitely up there too, because they gave him $50 million guaranteed, and it was a great move at the time, but no one thought that he was going to completely fall apart. But then again, that's when we know that running backs, have way more mileage than any other player in the league. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with the Morris Claiborne one, because it was definitely, at the time, it was like a pretty decent pick, but I mean, it did not work out for him. So I agree with you there. For the Dolphins, again, pretty much a mediocre football team. They're never really completely terrible. They're somewhere between 6-10 and 10-6 every year. Last year was definitely an anomaly since, they had all the talent and all the speed. But for the best decision, I think it's got to be trading for Tyreek Hill. And at the time, it looked like it was the worst decision that the Chiefs could have made, but they ended up winning back-to-back Super Bowls after that, so it didn't really matter. But for the Dolphins, I mean, they needed someone that was going to really unlock Tua as a quarterback, because they thought, oh, he's not the guy. He can't push the ball down the field. He can't live up to the moments. But getting Tyreek Hill helped him a lot because, I mean, yeah, we still have a lot of flaws to point out when it comes to Tua, but Tyreek Hill is the most unstoppable player in the NFL right now, just with how fast he is, his route running, just how many defenders try to shut him down on every single snap. So, I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind with me. But, I mean, I'm sure there are others that I'm not really thinking of at the time. What about yourself?
For the worst, I would definitely say it's tough with the Dolphins because they haven't made atrocious moves.
No,
the other teams. I think maybe drafting Deion Jordan is probably one. They drafted him 3rd overall.
That whole draft was terrible.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I guess that's definitely a silver lining, or not so, but that's definitely a little, I guess, an excuse you could say for that. But he was just not even remotely productive, and defensive end, and you're 3rd overall, not even to get a little production under that,
yeah,
I don't know. I'd probably go with that one.
I loved Clippers Deion Jordan because when he was with Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, Lob City, that was so fun to watch. I don't know if you remember watching them at the time, but they were the reason why the Clippers were even fun that year. The Dolphins Deion Jordan, not so much. I was actually going to bring up them giving Ndamukong Suh so much money. I think this was back in 2015. Let me look up the contract here, but
honestly though,
again, he was a good player, and he's still a great. I mean, throughout his whole career, he was a great player, but they just gave him way too much money. Let me look. 6-year, $114 million, and I mean, he only lasted 2 years there. Wasn't a terrible player. He was still an outstanding run stuffer and could generate pressure, but it was just couldn't really live up to that contract. But yeah, drafting Deion Jordan 3rd overall was very terrible. But you can literally say that with almost any first-round pick from that 2013 draft, because if you look at the later rounds, they were flat out spectacular.
Yep.
But I agree with you there. For the Philadelphia Eagles, at the time, it was it was flat out absurd because they gave Carson Wentz a huge contract extension, and he was coming off a pretty good season. They had just won the NFC East, but the injuries were piling on. He had the torn ACL, he had the season-ending back injury. There was that concussion that Jadeveon Clowney gave him that knocked him out of his only playoff appearance. But in the 2020 second round, they drafted Jalen Hurts. No one knew what he was going to do for them. I mean, he wasn't even thought of as a quarterback. He was just a project that was going to be in for Wildcat snaps. But once they gave Jalen Hurts his opportunity, he showed moments. And then they traded Carson Wentz to Indy. They fired Doug Peterson. They brought in Nick Sirianni. But from that moment on, he ended up being a pretty solid quarterback. They made the playoffs his second year. They went to the Super Bowl his third, and another playoff appearance in his fourth, albeit a collapse. But at the same time, I think sticking with Jalen Hurts over Carson Wentz worked out for them in hindsight because Carson Wentz ended up being trash, and Jalen Hurts' stock completely rose. And now he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in football. But one that was probably right up there with him was trading for A.J. Brown. But we'll get into this later. It was horrible for Tennessee. So,
yeah, those two good ones. Definitely, their offensive linemen, too, are definitely some good ones, too, that are honorable mentions. But I would say for their worst, definitely Nnamdi. Has to be signing Nnamdi. I think
Nnamdi Asomugha.
Yeah.
Yep.
They gave him a boatload of money. He only lasted like 2 seasons with them.
Dream team.
Yeah, dream team. He wasn't the one that said it, though, right? It was
no, that was Vince Young. But, that's why he called it, though, because they signed Nnamdi Asomugha, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, Jason Babbitt, Ronnie Brown. They had Vic and McCoy and Deshaun Jackson and Macklin. It was supposed to be, I wouldn't say, like, the best team, but it had enough to, like, on paper to make a huge run in the playoffs, and they went freaking 8-8, and Asomugha couldn't cover a damn person.
It was a disaster. It wasn't even like he was just like not worth the money. He was just a liability. So it was kind of similar to the J.C. Jackson signing, but way higher stakes. That team was supposed to be good. So,
yeah. Honorable mention: drafting Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson.
I almost did that, but like I don't know that because
it's a really rare Howie Roseman did that.
But like I feel like with how the stakes, like how good the Eagles, the dream team label, like.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, I think it's going to be at the top. That and, taking J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in the second. But, yeah, Asomugha's definitely up there because, it was the dream team, and the biggest signing from that couldn't cover anybody and was just a total liability. Even LaShawn McCoy freaking called him out on it on the I Am Athlete podcast. So, I agree with you there. But let's go to the Atlanta Falcons. Not too many positive moments, but this was another Cleveland Browns L. In 2011, they traded their first-round pick. They traded down with the Atlanta Falcons. And who did they take? Julio Jones. And he ended up being definitely I'd have to, literally go back in time and, look through, some of the greatest receivers to play for the Atlanta Falcons. But Julio Jones is definitely right up there at the top, or right near the top, because he's everything you want in a wide receiver: the route running, the catching radius, the verticality. His ability to break free after contact. How many yards he could get after the catch. The fact that the Browns literally traded down just for the Falcons to get him, and the return that Cleveland got. Yeah, this was trading for Julio Jones. That's a huge one.
Yeah, I think for the worst, I think it's tough because this one doesn't seem that bad when you look at it because it wasn't like they spent a lot or invested a lot in it, but it essentially wasted 2 seasons. I think that was drafting Desmond Ridder. I think the way they drafted him to be an eventual starter, and I feel like everyone knew, not everyone, but I feel like
that whole quarterback class was so weak.
True, but they did not have they were drafting him to be the eventual successor to Marcus Mariota.
Yes,
that's just bad process, and I think that's ultimately what lost a ton of people their jobs. It's what's kind of hindered the development of many key players in the Falcons. And he was honestly so bad that they got 2 more quarterbacks they have 3 starting caliber quarterbacks on there now because of how bad Desmond Ridder was. So.
Yeah. You know what? That's actually so freaking what makes that quarterback class so terrible. The best one was the last pick.
Yeah.
And it was Brock Purdy. And he wasn't even supposed to start for them. He was their 3rd string guy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Unreal.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett was in the 1st round. Malik Willis, definitely not a starting level quarterback. Desmond Ridder, backup. Matt Corral, he's in the UFL. I forgot who else got taken in that year, but I mean, you guys get the point. Let's go to the New York Giants, and I'm actually curious to see what TJ goes with his worst one, since this is his team. But tell me if you agree with this one. For the best one, I think it was stealing Victor Cruz in the 2000 draft. I mean, obviously the injuries completely derailed the rest of his career, but the minute that he took the field in the preseason against the Jets, he was flat out amazing. He was making catches out of nowhere. Even Rex Ryan was freaking amazed with how well Victor Cruz was carving up their defense. He gets his shot in 2011, balls out for them, has a Pro Bowl level season, catches their first touchdown in the Super Bowl, gets them a ring. I'm trying to think. I mean, drafting Saquon at 2, definitely not up there, even though he was definitely an outstanding player. I mean, TJ has said it himself. It's just a terrible pick, taking a running back with the 2nd round. From a hater's perspective, you could say trade down for Kadarius Toney, taking Daniel Jones. But also, you know what? Not only was stealing Victor Cruz there, drafting Andrew Thomas, 4th overall. I think you have to say that because no one was thinking of Andrew Thomas. It was a really tackle-heavy draft. I mean, there was Mekhi Becton and Tristan Wirfs and a boatload of other guys, but Andrew Thomas ended up being the best one out of that whole class. So stealing Victor Cruz and then drafting Andrew Thomas. Would you agree? And also taking Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, that would have been
people
mine.
thought that was a reach because Montez Sweat was the next guy, but Dexter Lawrence, safe to say, was a pretty solid player for them. Is still a solid player for them.
Well, yeah, I love the Victor Cruz one because I loved Victor Cruz. I probably would have gone with Dexter just because we've really never seen. That's not true.
You had Justin Tuck and Strahan. Come on.
No,
Taylor.
That's not where I was going. I was saying,
sorry.
A guy that big be able to move like that.
Oh yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think we've ever seen because I was going to say we've never seen a defensive tackle like that, but I didn't want to come off like we haven't seen like Aaron Donald and freakish players like that.
No. I got you.
Never seen a guy that big be able to rush the passer as well. Like you see the amount of pressures he gets just as strictly the nose tackle position is unreal. So I probably would have gone with Dexter just because how he's literally changing the way offenses have to play for him, play towards him. So yeah, but all the other ones you mentioned were good.
The worst is going to be so fun. And I'm not doing, and I'm not saying that because I want you to be sad. Trust me, I don't think that away. But it's just, oh my god.
I think for me, I'm not even gonna go with a player or like a specific move. I'm gonna go with an entire draft class.
Is this the one I sent you?
Honestly, though, I was thinking about a different one, but it could be that one too.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking of?
I was thinking of the 2018 one, but now that you mention it, the
2018 you got Saquon. Come on,
a running back at 2, man. I'm telling you,
he was still great for you.
Yeah. Either way, I think I'm changing my answer anyway because the 2021 Giants draft class. Oh my goodness, can't even put into words.
Oh my god!
They had the 11th overall pick, I think. Yeah, they traded down. They drafted Kadarius Toney. But even then, like I like Aziz. He's just never healthy. You know what? This is a tough one just because there's so many. There's literally so many here.
I thought you were going to go with a certain head coach or a few head coaches, really.
But like honestly, was it the head coach's fault? You know what? I'm changing it. It was hiring Dave Kettleman. Hiring Dave Kettleman.
I mean,
because like
No.
but honestly, he gave us Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, but everything else was terrible. The 2018 draft, horrendous. You take a running back at number 2, you could have traded down, you could have taken Josh Allen, you could have taken Lamar, awful. 2019, you got Dexter Lawrence, so I'm not going to get mad at that. 2020, you got Andrew Thomas, fine, but 2021 was awful. You took Kadarius Toney, so many bad free agency signings, Kenny Galladay, Nate Solder, like it has to
I mean, they were all good signings at the time, or at least we thought they were.
Yeah, I feel like I might be just being lazy and combining it all into one, but I feel like it's hiring Dave Gettleman just because of how many misses there were.
I mean, you hired Ben McAdoo. Really, the worst decision you made was Ben McAdoo thinking that Geno Smith was a better starter than Eli Manning at the time. And then ended up getting him and Jerry Reese fired. I actually would have gone with an underrated one, choosing Eric Flowers over Todd Gurley.
Yeesh, yeah.
But I mean, there are so many. So we'll go with yours, hiring Dave Gettleman.
Only one, I feel like, right? Because there's so many that
there's so many though.
There's so many ones that are so equal, and there's one common denominator. It's the guy who picked all of them. So
I know, but I mean, listen, Gettleman, he did get you Dexter Lawrence, he did get you Andrew Thomas, and Saquon, for as bad as you think the pick was, Saquon was doing everything he could to make you guys relevant. But he also did draft Daniel Jones. Let's go with the Jaguars here. And for the last 15 years, they never really had too many good moments. I mean, 2017, they went to the AFC Championship. They had an outstanding defense. I could say, they drafting Jalen Ramsey was there, but honestly, like, it was hard for me just because, they never really made too many moves that went wow or worked out in the long run. I'm not going to say drafting Trevor Lawrence. I'm not going to say that. And I'm sure as hell not going to say giving him that extension because I don't think he's worth $55 a year. Honestly, I'll say hire Doug Peterson. I know it's not saying much and his future's not really great right now, but given the fact that Urban Meyer happened the year before and Doug Peterson in 1 year completely turned that around and literally helped them come back from a 27-0 deficit after winning their division, winning a playoff game, and then barely losing to the Chiefs. Yeah, I think that was something that at least worked out for them and is, could still work out for them because even with that collapse last year, he's still a good head coach. He knows how to lead, and it's just, it's just times where his aggressiveness and his ego just get ahead of him. But do you think I'm missing anything? I could say drafting Jalen Ramsey.
I probably would have gone Ramsey. It's tough with the Jaguars because there hasn't been a lot.
But I mean, at the time, like it was pretty much an easy one because he was like the best corner in college at that time.
Yeah, no, that could be a good one. The Doug Peterson one. I'm going to talk about another former Eagle with my Jaguars worst decision. I'm going to go signing Nick Foles. He played
really over hiring Urban Meyer.
No, that's bad too. I considered that one, but I think with Nick Foles, like how they paid him so much money.
50 guaranteed, $50 million guaranteed.
Oh, and it was right after they got rid of Bortles. Like they made the same mistake literally 8 months before.
Yeah, they gave him a 3-year extension because he was a short-term option for a team that had an outstanding running game and a great defense. I'm sorry.
No, and that's essentially what Nick Foles was. So essentially, like they just made the same mistake, compounded on itself because they were still paying Foles. They cut him, or they were still paying Bortles. They cut him. Then they paid Nick Foles. And then when Minshew was starting, they were paying. So they're paying. I don't know if this was the case, but at some point they were probably paying Bortles and Foles to not play.
Yep.
So that's rough. I think that was kind of the lowest point for Jaguars fans. But Minshew was playing kind of well, so it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But
yeah,
I'd definitely say those.
I mean, I'm not saying this to defend the contract, but if he didn't fracture his collarbone in the first game of the season, who knows how he could have played? But
it though, it's like just didn't work out.
Yeah, exactly. But I would have gone with hiring Urban Meyer because, oh my God, like the minute he took the job, it was terrible. I mean,
it's definitely bad.
I'm not even going to go through the moves, but I mean, Tim Tebow at tight end. That's all you really have to know.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge.
And so many moves and so many things that happened like during the season. I mean, we could talk about what he did after the Thursday night loss to the Bengals. We could talk about the reports, kicking Josh Lambo, calling his assistants losers, getting into fights with players. Like, this was during the season.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of bad.
Let's go to the New Jersey Jets. Again, another team that just didn't have too many highs, but honestly, I'm going to go with signing Antonio Cromartie at the time because to pair him with Darrelle Revis, it was one of the best quarterback tandems that we've ever seen in the league. In fact, it was a huge reason why they were one of the best defenses in football that year. In the playoffs, they went 11-5. They shut down Peyton Manning, then they shut down Tom Brady, and even though they lost to the Steelers, they were like the cornerstones of that whole defense. And obviously you had Bart Scott and Sean Ellis and those guys. And, Rex Ryan was, pretty much the head coach. But Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie were, in my opinion, the two best players. And I think signing Cromartie after a successful stint with the Chargers, that was great. And the only reason why I'm not saying trading for Aaron Rodgers just yet is because we don't even know how he's going to play coming off of that torn Achilles.
Yeah, no, that's definitely too early to say that. For the Jets' worst one,
there's so many,
but I think the Adam Gase one sticks out to me. The eyes. I think when we saw that, we were just like, oh, now it doesn't define a player, but it does define a person. But that definitely.
I know that was just still. We were just like, is he okay? We were just worried for him because I was like, oh boy,
yeah. But it wasn't even that. I mean, this is 9-23 record. Like, ugh, that's disgusting. And then I feel like more than anything, like it was just the fact that like maybe Sam Darnold wasn't ever going to be a special player, but that definitely didn't help his development having Adam Gase as head coach. I mean, we saw what happened.
He was seeing ghosts.
Yeah, no, I'm not defending Darnold, but like, definitely didn't help his development. Like he didn't give him the best chance to succeed. I feel like the players really didn't love playing for him. It seemed with a lot of instances, but that's
the only reason why he even was good was because Peyton Manning was his quarterback in Denver.
Yeah. Like that's when players when we saw it with McDaniels, like when coaches get signed because they're with former players, like good players, like that's usually a bad sign.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would have said, trading up for Sam Darnold, drafting Zach Wilson, giving Le'Veon Bell too much money. Actually, I mean, at the time it was like, okay, Jets got Le'Veon Bell, but he was not effective for them. But you could literally say that in every offseason. I mean, signing Corey Davis, they were literally the champions of the offseason that got big names that just never worked out for them on the field. That's why I didn't go with Aaron Rodgers, because it could work out for them. Yeah. It could not. I did my season preview on the Jets a few days ago. I had them going 10-7 because, with the talent on the roster, yeah, they should be a really good team. And I texted my Jets friend what he thought. He thinks they're going 13-4. So that's a little extreme, but
we'll see. But I can see it happening. They have the upside.
We'll see. But it's the Jets, and also you have Nathaniel Hackett. So there you go.
Yeah.
All right, the Detroit Lions. We're halfway done, by the way. For the Detroit Lions, this is too easy for me. Hiring Dan Campbell. I mean, with the 0-16 season in 2008, the Jim Schwartz not working out, Jim Caldwell being mediocre, Matt Patricia. All you need, nothing else needs to be said. Patriots fans warned you. We warned you. But yeah, hiring Dan Campbell. I mean, the press conference was definitely something interesting, biting kneecaps and all of that. But he backed it up. Even though they were horrible his first season, they fought. They gave it everything they've got. They just didn't have the talent to really win a lot of games. Then the second year, they were on Hard Knocks. They were fun to watch that year. And after a 1-6 start, they go 9-8 and barely miss the playoffs. And then just this last year, they go to the freaking conference championship game and have their best season ever. And none of that would have been possible without the vision that Dan Campbell said. He helped revive Jared Goff's career. He got a star out of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. He pretty much revitalized that whole offense. And even though the defense is still terrible, like he has his team fighting and believing. and the whole city is rallying around him. And honestly, the whole NFL world wants to see them win a championship. So hiring Dan Campbell has to be number one, and everything else is just way down the list.
Yeah, I think I'd probably go with another head coach for the worst move. I think it's hiring Matt Patricia. I mean, granted, was he given the most talented rosters? No, but he also had Matthew Stafford, and again, he was hired for his defense, and we all knew that was really the Bill Belichick. That was Bill Belichick's defense. And plus the Patriots coaches, they haven't been working, so I think people are realizing that now.
Exactly. Like when you don't have Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, when you don't have the cachet or the success that Bill Belichick has, and when your quarterback doesn't have the persona that Tom Brady has, no one cares. Like, you're gonna get tuned out.
Yeah. No, but I think that's
sorry.
I think it's definitely the worst.
Yep.
A lot of moves.
And I know that's not saying a lot because it was the Lions back then, and they were just pretty much in the league's basement that year. But yeah, Patriots fans knew that it was going to be a terrible hire because Matt Patricia was pretty much a hack, and he's still a hack. And that's why, an NFL team hasn't hired him, because whenever he's given full control of the defense, it's terrible. And when you give him an offense, it's even worse.
Yeah.
So
we saw that 2 years ago.
I mean, his whole time at Detroit was just miserable. So There you go. For the Packers, in hindsight, I think it definitely was. I mean, at the time it was terrible, but I think trading up for Jordan Love ended up working out for them, because the best time to take a quarterback is when you really don't need one. And even though Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs since Jordan Love got drafted, I mean, Love waited. He developed. He learned behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And when he finally got his shot, he pretty much picked up where Rodgers left off. I mean, 4,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns, beat down the Cowboys in his first playoff win. And now he's going to get a contract extension. So, I mean, yeah, it was definitely very controversial at the time. But now it's like, it was definitely the best thing that could have happened, because if they had to scramble for a quarterback when Aaron Rodgers demanded that trade, then I don't know how good they really would have been.
He wouldn't have developed like Jordan Love did.
Right.
And I think a lot of teams are just start to model that.
I mean, if you remember in 2005, they took Aaron Rodgers in the first round, and they still had Brett Favre, and it took him a few years to get his shot, and we all know how well that worked out.
Yeah, that's why the Packers have been so successful at quarterback. I think for the worst move, there's not a lot. I was looking earlier, there's not a lot.
No, there isn't.
But maybe signing Martellus Bennett, I think, was one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
He won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, the one versus the Falcons. And he didn't resign with the Patriots, but the Packers signed him to like a 3-year deal with a lot of money. And he didn't even last the whole season. They cut him midway through the season, and then
I think there was stuff going on that.
Yeah, there was stuff going on, but like the Patriots picked him right back up, and that was a lot of what the Patriots did. Like they would trade a player, or let a player walk, and then that player would get off the team, and they would get them right back. So
exactly,
I think that's definitely one that's up there.
Yep. Yeah, again, I agree. There are not too many bad moves with the Packers.
No.
Let's go to the Panthers. And it was really hard for me to think of a good move. But really, I got to go to that 2011 offseason. I mean, you hire Ron Rivera, you sign Greg Olsen, and you draft Cam Newton. I think those three moves alone, obviously they didn't win a championship, but those three were like the three leading faces of that whole peak era between 2011 and 2018. And then a year later, they draft Luke Kuechly. So,
good
yeah,
draft.
I think that whole 2011 offseason for Carolina definitely has to be up there. But again, it's the Panthers. They never really did anything that great in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
What would you say the worst is? Because there are a lot.
I was thinking about a few, but I think hiring Matt Rule is probably up there. Probably the worst.
Yes.
I think, and after him too, well, him and Urban Meyer, who we talked about previously, I think teams are starting to realize, let's not hire coaches right out of college. I mean, Jim Harbaugh's different because, like,
he was in the NFL.
He was in the NFL, so, and we've talked about this before, but yeah, I'd probably go with Matt Rule. And essentially, I mean, it was the league kind of realized that,
The contract was horrible.
Yeah, they gave him a lot of money, which I guess doesn't affect the salary cap, but it affects the owners, and the owners get pissed when they have to sign money and the coaches don't pan out. So I'd probably go with that one, just because of what he was supposed to be and ultimately how awful it turned out to be. But
there was some upside with Matt Rule because he had turned around Temple, he turned around Baylor. He was known for turning around programs, but you don't get away with that stuff in the NFL.
It's the NFL.
So, I hope he does well in Nebraska. So, at least you can hope that. He is a good college coach, but it's gonna hard to recruit guys to go to Nebraska. Scott Frost couldn't do it, and he was actually great at UCF.
Yeah.
But here we go to the Patriots. I think we've been normally good for the last 15 years. I think it's safe to say. But I think the first thing that came to my mind was in 2017 not trading away Tom Brady and keeping him because Bill Belichick, for whatever reason, wanted to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. Robert Kraft didn't want to trade away Tom Brady, and we all know why. At the time, I was like, why the hell would you trade away Tom Brady? He's literally the best player that you've ever had. And for some reason, Bill Belichick thought otherwise. But Robert Kraft overruled him, and they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo to the 49ers, which ended up working out for him. But he didn't win a couple more Super Bowls the way Tom Brady did. So, yeah, not trading Brady was definitely the best thing that could have happened. So, and I know he ended up leaving a few years later, but the fact that, that was even a topic was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was better than being stuck with Garoppolo. I'd say. I think the worst Patriots move out of the very few is probably drafting N'Keal Harry.
Yep.
Currently a tight end right now, so hopefully that works.
Yeah, tight end N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, just who they passed up onto in that draft. Tough pill to swallow there. But not a lot of moves to pick from here, so I feel like this was the most blatant one. So
yep. Could have had AJ Brown, could have had DK Metcalf, could have had Deebo Samuel, but no.
Terry. Honestly, I would have rather had
Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, Terry or even Darius Slayton. I would have rather had there than N'Keal Harry, but
it's Jalen Polk's season, I guess. But
yeah, the Pats drafted some studs in the draft receiver wise, so I'm excited to watch those.
Exactly. All right, let's go to the Raiders and look at their last 50 years. Again, nothing great, nothing worthy of, nailing the list. But I'm going to go with a little bit of a recent move, keeping Antonio Pierce, because they didn't do that 2 years ago with Rich Bisaccia. The players loved him. They all wanted him back. But Mark Davis wanted to bring in Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler. And we all knew that it wasn't going to work out. When you cut Derek Carr, who you bring in? Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. So keeping Antonio Pierce was definitely at least a win for them because we all knew how much the players responded to them, how they ran through walls for him. And I'm wishing nothing but the best for him. So, they're going to fight for him. So keeping him, A+.
Worst move? I'll probably go with another head coach here, maybe hiring Dennis Allen. I think that's definitely
really over Josh McDaniels. Man,
that's a good point. I don't know. Dennis Allen was really bad though. He won four games the first 2 years, and then the last year he was fired after 5 games. Not good. I know the talent is different, but McDaniel's I don't know. It's tough. Maybe just maybe I'll put this into one and just be every head coaching hire they've made.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin.
I think
back John Gruden.
Honestly, that's what I'm changing to. Every head coaching decision they have made. Well, okay, because we don't know what's going to happen with Antonio Pierce. He was great last, but we'll see.
Jack Del Rio.
Yeah, I think that's the thing there. Any head coaching decision the Raiders have made, that's the one.
Listen. Jack Del Rio took them to the playoffs.
Fair, Jack Del Rio's in it, but even then, Jack Del Rio's really just a one-hit one. And plus, that was mainly Derek Carr had an MVP season that year, so it's
exactly.
How much were you really putting on Jack?
I would have just gone with not keeping Bisaccia for Josh McDaniels. But yeah, Raiders are definitely underrated when it comes to not hiring good coaches because people usually think the Browns or the Lions or the Jets, but
it's the Raiders.
Yeah, the Raiders are definitely in the top 5 for sure. I agree with that. All right, well, we're almost done with this. I mean, I could do this with TJ all day, but we're just about to finish this thing up. Let's go to the Rams. Honestly, I think trading Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford has to be like at least up there because obviously Jared Goff wasn't getting it done, and Matthew Stafford definitely needed a change of scenery. And once he finally had a legit head coach and a team around him, they were able to take off. It's kind of similar from Jameis Winston to Tom Brady, but Jared Goff is a million times better. And he just, Jared Goff just needed a fresh start somewhere else. And safe to say, it's working out for him in Detroit. But I think, both teams needed to move on from each other's quarterbacks. And the Rams were definitely the best place that could have happened to Matthew Stafford. And if it wasn't for that, Cooper Kupp wouldn't have emerged as the top flight receiver that he is now. So,
yeah, I mean, these last literally like 5 or 7 more. These last ones are hard because we're going to get through some. We're about to get to some like successful teams, at least in the past like decade. So for the Rams, I had to date myself. I had to go back a while because they haven't had a lot of
St. Louis.
Yeah. So I guess it's not really LA Rams, so sorry, but
no, it's fine. It's Rams.
It is the Rams. I'm gonna go with this one is interesting because I forgot about this one. I was looking at it earlier when they signed Cortland Finnegan to he was good on the Titans. I think people forget that he was mainly known for that fight with Andre Johnson. I
love that fight. I mean, I don't love violence. Don't get me wrong, but I just remember that was like one of the only. That was like the first real thing that got me, made me pay attention to football. Because what crap?
Like I'd never seen that before.
Like you had one of the best quarterbacks and one of the best wide receivers, literally ripping each other's helmets off and throwing punches. Oh my god! Trust me, I didn't. We're not condoning violence. We're not trying to do that. But I was like, it was just really wild.
Yeah. No, I agree. But he was a good player. I think that's goes without saying, just the numbers and everything like that. He was one of the top tier cornerbacks. But then, the Rams signed him. They signed him to a boatload of money. Even I think I was looking earlier, it was 5 years, tens of millions. It was a lot. But he only lasted 2 seasons. Then he just bounced around a bunch of other teams, some practice squads. Really, it was the beginning of the end for his career. So I'd probably go with that one. And that honestly just shows how, listen, they've had some other bad ones, but really not enough to be damn, they really stunk. And especially considering the success they've had, I'd probably go with this one.
Yeah, probably that or hiring Jeff Fisher.
Yeah, that was up there too for me.
And also, you remember when the Commanders made that huge trade to get RG3, they traded up with the St. Louis Rams, and the Rams literally did next to nothing with those picks.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I would I'll side with you there. The Cortland Finnegan one was just really shocking. And, that fight was the only reason why I even knew who he was in the first place. But, at the time, he was a pretty good cornerback. It was kind of like an Asamar or J.C. Jackson type of move. So, yeah. All right, for the Ravens, the Ravens have normally done well when it comes to drafting players. Their first one ever, they took Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis, who are two of the best players at their positions. But I'm going to go with a little more of a recent pick and say drafting Lamar Jackson in 2018. We just knew that, Joe Flacco's time was running up, and it was a pretty good draft class for quarterbacks. You had Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen and, unfortunately, Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen. But Lamar Jackson fell all the way late in the first round. And Baltimore, I think they traded up just to get Lamar Jackson. And 2 MVPs later, he is pretty much the best quarterback they've ever had. Or one of them. I know Joe Flacco won them a Super Bowl, and so did Trent Dilfer. But
He is the
I
best
mean,
quarterback they've
Lamar
had.
Jackson, yeah, I don't think that's any debate.
Yeah, it's not even close. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. That's a pretty easy one. But they've had a lot of good moves, so it's like not to take away from that, but that when you get the quarterback right and you get a multiple-time MVP and looking like he's going to be a Hall of Famer pretty soon, like you're looking good.
Exactly.
For mine, not a lot to pick from because
Yeah.
they don't really make a lot of bad moves. I'd probably go with trading Anquan Bolden when they trade him.
Really?
Yeah, because when you look at him, like he had some productive seasons with the Niners after he got traded, and they trade him for a 6th-round pick. So it's not like they got good value out of it. I get probably it was like a salary cap dump, but like still he was. I mean, he was getting up there in age, but like still a good player with the Niners.
I don't know if I would have gone with that. I mean,
I
he
don't
was
know
pretty
which
much
one you
entering
would.
the tail end of his career.
But he had like 2 or 3 good years after that too. So
he
it's like
did.
not like so. But honestly, that just goes more to show how the Ravens really don't make any bad moves. I just can't think of another one.
Yeah. I can't really either. I mean,
I feel like that's
they
only
tried
one.
bringing in Crabtree, which was okay. Only lasted 1 year, but it's
Yeah, but it was like
whatever.
like it's like it was a trial move. Like they just try like it was like
Exactly.
a low risk. I feel like when they don't pan out for the Ravens, like they're very low risk moves. Like think of Odell. Like yeah, Odell did not work out for them, but it was so low risk. They signed him for a year.
It was like whatever. You had Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers and Bateman. It was
and
like
plus when you're a good team, like you don't need to worry about like these low risk moves not panning out because they
Right.
don't make or break you. So it's like this was the only one I could think of where they just like, damn, they kind of did not get good value here. So
exactly. Let's go to the New Orleans Saints. And it took me a while for me to think of it, but honestly, I got to go with trading Adrian Peterson in 2017 because if it wasn't for that, nobody would have been able to watch the dynamic running back duo between Mark Ingram and rookie Alvin Kamara. I mean, you had Mark Ingram. Not only was he like an absolute bruiser, but he was, for a guy his size, he was like incredibly quick. He was really shifty. And then Alvin Kamara was a rookie who wasn't really expected to do anything, just turns into one of the leading candidates for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And since then, he's had a really successful career with the Saints. So, I mean, Adrian Peterson was pretty much past his prime. They traded him at the deadline to Arizona. And because of that, they were able to have one of the best running games in the league. And that was why the Saints, made the playoffs that year and won the division.
yeah, I think that's a good one. Either that or no. It's when you put it that way, I think that's a really good one. For the Saints' worst, maybe signing Jairus Byrd.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the fact how much money they signed him to. He was not great. I mean, he was all pro caliber with the Bills, so it was just like tough to see him kind of fall off like that. With these secondary, it's like I'm noticing.
I would have gone with the Michael Thomas extension, but then again, nobody could have seen the injuries coming.
With Jairus Byrd, he just fell off a cliff, and we're noticing it a lot with the second. A lot of these, when we talk about the positions with these ones, the worst ones, a lot of them have come in the secondary. So you really got to nail the secondary position. You really got to be careful with those. So I'd probably go with that one. And the Saints, again, don't make a lot of bad moves. So it was a tough one, but I'd probably go with that one.
Bounty Gate will always be like the biggest stain on their legacy. And we don't need to talk about that. But in terms of like a player signing, I would say Jairus Byrd.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
It's Jairus or Jairus? I think it's Jairus. Jairus Byrd.
I always thought he was pretty good in Buffalo, and I was shocked. I was shocked myself when I found out he didn't work out with the Saints. But
yeah, he's great.
They're going to happen with a lot of teams. So we got 5 more to go through. Let's go to the Seahawks here, and this was too easy for me. In 2012, they gave Matt Flynn a ridiculous 3-year contract because of one good game he had in a meaningless regular season finale against the Packers, where he threw 6 touchdowns. And the best thing that Pete Carroll could have done was say, screw the contract. We're making our 3rd-round pick, Russell Wilson, the starter. And sure enough, I mean, he ended up having a pretty good career, took them to Super Bowls, won them a championship, ended up being the best quarterback they've had since Matt Hasselbeck. Some will say that he's a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to go there just yet, but if it wasn't for Russell Wilson beating him out at camp, I don't know if the Seahawks. I don't even think Pete Carroll would have had a coaching job. So,
yeah, crazy, man. The Seahawks' worst move is tough because it could be the Matt Flynn one, but it didn't end up really mattering. So the one I'm going to say is very injury dependent, so it's tough to say like the player because it was a good player, but just the injury kind of hurt it. I'm going to go when they traded for Percy Harvin.
Didn't he win the Super Bowl MVP?
No, he didn't win the Super Bowl MVP. That was Malcolm Smith.
Oh, that's right, Malcolm Smith. I forgot about
he was
that.
still good in that. He was still good in that playoff run. So I'll get, but like the regular season, he was injured the whole season, and then they traded him midway through the 2014 season. And again,
to the Jets.
Yeah. So like Percy Harvin, great player. Like we remember Percy Harvin as like the human joystick. Like so, not taking that away, but
I mean, I thought he was better as a Viking. Really?
Oh, absolutely. Oh no, I'm not like 100% because with the Seahawks, But honestly, it's just the fact they gave up like a first and a third round pick for him. I think that's really what is there. And again, I hate to say it, but like we were on the Seahawks, the Ravens, the Saints. Like those are teams that have had a lot of success the past 10 years. So it's hard to pick like a move that truly was detrimental. So I'd probably go with that one just because trading a first round pick is always maybe trading Max Unger, but I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. Unger, but they got Jimmy Graham out of it. So tough to say that one. So I'll stick with the Percy Harvin one.
Yeah. Not much to debate there. I would have probably gone with the Matt Flynn contract because you gave him that much money off of one game and he doesn't even start for you. So
that was definitely up there for me too.
Yeah. Losing your job to a third round pick after that, come on.
Tough move. Yeah.
All right. For the Steelers, I think it was giving TJ Watt $80 million guaranteed because at the time, Pittsburgh never really did that with a lot of their players. And with TJ Watt, they pretty much broke the record there. And rightfully so. He was literally the best defensive player they had. Well, not in their whole franchise history because, I mean, it's the Steelers we're talking about. But TJ Watt was just another name. I mean, he broke the single-season sack record after that, and he played fewer games, which is incredible. And he's an absolute game wrecker. So if anybody deserved to get that much money, it was him.
For the worst year, could I go hiring Matt Canada?
I mean, you could.
Hard to think of a lot of others.
I mean, you could say drafting Kenny Pickett, but again, they needed a quarterback.
Yeah, I feel like hiring
Matt Canada. But you could have just said Trubisky and Rudolph, whatever.
I feel like a lot of the reason, though, those guys weren't great, but a lot of the reason they didn't succeed was because
hiring Canada.
So, like again, common denominator. Like, what is it? Might be Canada. So, I'd probably go with that. If I forgot something, you tell me, Colin. But I feel like that's the one I'd go with there.
I don't think so. I mean, because the Steelers have not had a losing season at all. So it's like, what can you really say was a bad move they made? Yeah, sure. Drafting Najee Harris wasn't great in the first round, but he's still pretty good.
Not as bad as Canada, though.
Exactly. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you there. Either that or, promoting Randy Fichtner. I mean, they never really qualified to be good play callers. So not a wrong answer there. All right, we got a few more here. Let's go to the Houston Texans. For the best, I think you got to go with everything that they did last year. Hire DeMeco Ryans, draft CJ Stroud, trade up for Will Anderson, and you see the results. And, also you draft Tank Dell, you sign Noah Brown, you keep Nico Collins, you sign Robert Woods and Dalton Schultz, and you make all these improvements. And now they're like one of the most feared teams in the whole league. So everything that they did last year has to be up there for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll be brief with this one because you just talked about it. You talked about it a little bit ago. I think trading DeAndre Hopkins
for David Johnson.
Yeah, you basically just explained the whole thing earlier. So not much to say there. I'd definitely say that's the worst one.
Yeah. For the Titans, again, not too much for me to think about here. I guess maybe the closest one would say, drafting Derrick Henry, but I feel like that's too obvious. But I will say benching Marcus Mariota for Ryan Tannehill. And we could talk about what happened for him down the road, but I think, when Marcus Mariota played, he was mid. He was literally the definition of mid. But when Ryan Tannehill took over in the middle of the 2019 season, for whatever reason, the Titans offense took off. And even though he wasn't the biggest reason why they got to the conference championship, you knew that they had a serviceable quarterback. And maybe the contract extension was too much, but I think if Arthur Smith didn't leave, then maybe things would have turned out differently. So that's probably what I would say. If it's not that, then drafting Derrick Henry. But again, that's just too obvious.
Yeah, I think for the Titans, I'd probably go trading AJ Brown.
Yeah, that's not even a debate.
Yeah, not a debate. To get Traylon
Burks. It got John Robinson fired, and Traylon Burks it needs to play well on special teams for him to even have a roster spot.
Yeah, I feel like that says all you need to know, right?
I know. I mean, it's just I don't know why anybody would think that, yeah, probably get decent draft picks, but with the Eagles, you're pretty much gifted them a Super Bowl appearance right there. So,
yeah.
All right. We got to the last one, the Minnesota Vikings, and I already talked about, the Bills trading for Stephon Diggs. Honestly, it worked out so well for the Vikings because they used that first-round pick to get Justin Jefferson. And he pretty much landed into their lap because the Eagles thought, let's get Jalen Reagor. He's going to turn out so well for us, and clearly it didn't. And actually, funny enough, both of them ended up being on the same team. So there you go. But, yeah, trading Diggs for Jefferson really worked out because, yeah, Diggs was a good receiver, but Justin Jefferson is pretty much the best one in all of football right now. So, yeah taking Jefferson, the gritty.
I think to wrap it all up, the worst Vikings move, probably drafting Christian Ponder.
Oh yeah,
I think
the Florida State kid.
I think
it was after Cam Newton. That whole quarterback class was terrible.
So I mean, you could say that, but man, that was just a bad move. I mean, we talked about that on past draft like recap shows, but so watch those if you want to know our thoughts on Christian Ponder. But it's pretty straightforward. Just didn't work out. One of the definitions of those quarterback busts. So
I mean, he was athletic, but he couldn't throw well. And before you say, well, he helped them get to the playoffs in 2012. Yeah, it's easy to do that when Adrian Peterson is the MVP and is carrying your whole offense. And remember, at the time he was drafted, Donovan McNabb was under contract for them. Past his prime, Donovan McNabb.
Way past.
So,
yeah,
I can't disagree with you there. Drafting Christian Ponder. I really wish Teddy Bridgewater could have worked out, but after that injury, he was never the same after that.
Road back for him, unfortunately.
Exactly. But I think we wrapped it all up. Sorry for keeping you guys this long, but, this is what TJ and I love to do. We love to ramble about football. That's our specialty. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for additional content. Division previews coming up in a few weeks. Let us know if you agree with any of the decisions that we've made because the other teams sure as hell couldn't, and a few of them actually worked out for them. But we'll see you guys next week with another episode. Peace, everyone. Love y'all.